Hello, everybody. It is the American Doofus Show. Do not be a doofus. I'm your host, Barry Welsh. It is EAR night, End All Racism. And it's ladies' night as STARCHILD and Marie Justice join. Hello, ladies. How are you?
Hello, good.
Good afternoon. Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening. I've got a couple of stories I want to touch on here real quick before I turn it over to the ladies. Atlanta police detained a man with 5 guns today inside a grocery store. The man went into the store carrying a long gun that was visible. He had another concealed long gun and 3 pistols as well as body armor. Went into the restroom, armored up and loaded up. And by the time he came out, police had arrived on the scene and detained him before he did any damage. So I touched on it last night in the live that it's not safe to go to a grocery store. We always have to have our head on a swivel. The second thing I wanted to touch on was I mentioned the headmaster in New York City at the Catholic Church that had the 11-year-old boy kneel to give an apology and to apologize in the quote unquote African way. And that headmaster had been suspended. He has been terminated. Mm-hmm. So a step in the right direction there. And breaking news, North Korea has fired 2 ballistic missiles. And I'll have more on that coming up. But right now, ladies, I point out quite often the problems that racism and prejudice and discrimination and division cause, and you ladies are going to talk about that with some possible solutions.
Absolutely.
Okay, before we start, let's do an EAR commercial real quick. Star.
Awesome. Oh, we're super excited, everyone. We are looking to gain members, and we'd like to have everyone come in and just want to be a charter member of this organization as we grow it. So we now have the EAR t-shirts, and we have sizes all the way up to XX, and really good cotton, very, very nice quality. Summer's coming, so we can have you wear your EAR t-shirts. And also too, for $40, you can become a member, get a t-shirt, and we also have these really nice EAR charter member cards that we would love to give to some charter members that join EAR. And actually on the back, and it says 2021, charter member since 2021. And on the back is our EAR mission statement. So we would love to have people come in and become charter members and help us to grow the organization.
And we're limiting charter membership to the first 50 charter members, and they're the only ones that get this package. And we're also going to find a provider that gets us t-shirts above the XX level, bigger shirts, because everybody's not a teeny tiny, little tiny person, as has been pointed out by many people that want bigger sizes, and we are going to do that because we're inclusive.
That's right. That's right.
And so the Colorado suspect, 10 people killed out in Colorado. Was that a racist act? Was that a crazy person act? Was that a religious act?
I reading that story, and I've read it a couple of times. I could not watch the video. I've just become so sensitive about those videos and the humanity that's lost therein. And I think that people are just at their wits' end. I believe that, I'm not sure if that particular man was a racist, but I think with all of the negativity and all of the racist activity and all of the hateful divisiveness that's going on in this country, people are really just kind of at their wits' end. The psyche of America is not in a good state right now, I think.
Do you think there's a spiritual factor?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that the moral fabric that goes along with that goes along with the psyche of the country has been eviscerated on so many levels, and people don't have anyone to look to. Politicians are corrupt, many of them. It's just a kind of state of hopelessness, I think. And a lot of people aren't spiritually guided anymore.
Marie?
Yes, that's what I was going to say. Hopelessness. I feel like whether it was an act of racism or, someone, with a mental illness, or it's just, we can see that everybody is on edge. A lot of people are at their boiling point, and it just seems like America, is at that point. And I think that it's because people stay on edge because they're full of anxiety, and there isn't a lot of answers coming from the people that we think the answers should come from, or that a lot of people look to, the politicians and government, and where we're supposed to be guided. It's just it's a false sense of security, and so I feel like people don't have that stability that anchors them.
Do you think
the spiritual aspect that we were talking about?
Yeah. Do you think the false sense of security comes from like white privilege, from white people feeling so long that they're above so many things, that they're finding out that nobody's above anything? Do you think that causes anxiety?
I think that's a part of it. Going back to Marie's statement, I believe too that when you look at America from its inceptions, especially in the 40s and 50s, and after World War I and World War II, there was this camaraderie in America, and government was looked upon as a viable and honest institution in so many ways. Not in the Black community, I can tell you that, because because of the things that have happened to Africans here in America. But the country as a whole was this honorable. There was a lot of pride. We fought together. America was bonding. And
we fought for the same thing, but we didn't fight together because they kept the Black troops and the white troops.
That's right.
Separate.
That's right.
Still. But we all were fighting for the same thing, and that had a little bit of unity, but still it wasn't inclusive into the Black community.
Good point. And so, I think that everybody had trust. If the government said it, it must be true. And people had a genuine trust of the government, regardless of how corrupt it was. We all had this trust in the government to some degree. And so now that everything is being exposed and people are being videotaped and people are saying things and people have exposed themselves, America we've become unraveled, especially our older generation that had that level of trust and that camaraderie and in union with the government. It's shaking. I mean, it's shaking them at the core, and especially a lot of people that have served in the military. I talk to people that have served in the military, and we're like, what is going on? It's not the America we thought it was. So I think there's a lot of that's going on.
And how does racism tie into that?
Marie?
Well, I mean, one thing that I was going to say, when you were talking about the camaraderie, and when it felt like the nation was together, and it was because there were two groups, you could say, fighting for a common goal, per se, even though it wasn't on equal footing. So in situations like that, the contact, have you heard of the contact hypothesis?
No.
Yes.
As far as racism and prejudice go, and Gordon Allport?
No.
Have you?
I have. Go ahead. Explain to them.
Right. So it's basically, he's a Harvard psychologist, and he wrote The Nature of Prejudice in 1954. And he came up with, out of the studies and the research that he did, basically he was trying to examine why there were prejudice and racism, and what could be done about it. And so as he looked at the research, they came up with this contact hypothesis. And I have seen that work, I mean, in today's time, when people come together with a common goal, they unite for something that is more important than the conflict that is currently going on. Mm-hmm. But the thing about that, with the contact hypothesis, is they have to be on equal footing, and both groups have to feel that they are have equal say and equal, power stance. Or it can lead to, you have to go back and you have to look at, why does that power feel unequal, and what can be done about that, and get the power balance back, so that then you can work towards the common goal again. And I feel like there's so much division, and there's so much, it's hard to say why people are acting in racism. I think that it goes, it's like a fire that's been fueled. And then when people are hopeless,
I think they resort back to the least common denominator.
Right.
Which is institutional racism, which is, that racism within this country and globally that has allowed them to operate in a certain way and treat people a certain way because of the color of their skin or whatever other factor has been counted out and discounted about that person. And I think that hypothesis is really interesting because it flips that whole concept of prejudice on its head. That thought or feeling about an ethnic group, that's really unlikely to change, regardless of any facts or any evidence that proves them wrong in that theory. So the fact that he flipped it on his head, I think, is really, really productive.
Right. It's very interesting. I want to look more into, the actual book, but that, prejudice, it comes from it's just a concept, a misconceived, and you haven't even been exposed to that situation, but you have a preconceived idea of what it's going to be, or you have a preconceived idea of how that person is going to be, or what they have to offer, or what they bring into the world. And then with that prejudice, which is, it's that preconception, then they act in an act of racism. When they take that prejudice and they act in it, and then that's when we see the systemic racism, is because of those prejudices that weren't dispelled. But when you have that contact and, like you were saying, flip that prejudice on its head, because, just putting yourself in an environment, even if whether it's in, where you go to church, or with business dealings, or with your community, putting yourself in an environment where others are. And I just think that everyone needs to take a deep look in the mirror and ask, are there any prejudice or preconceived ideas that exist? And what step can I take to basically flip that on its head? Okay, well, I'm going to I'm going to put myself in that certain situation. So then I'm with those people and I'm in that environment and I develop relationships and I develop friendships and I get to know the person as an individual. That is where it's going to be is, you know, if people stop looking at groups as a whole and using preconceived prejudices, but just look at individuals. And I really think that we're just going to have to get to the point to where we get past the color of the skin. I mean, you know, there is so much lost if there is a preconceived idea because your skin color is different than mine.
Yeah, and I've said this before, Marie. I think that you know, to be everyone has some level of prejudice. Let's just acknowledge that everyone has some level of prejudice, whether it be your neighbor doesn't cut their grass, whether it be, you know, the you don't like the bikes that the kids bought, you know, whatever that level of, you don't like those people because they're not a part of, you know, where you came from. They're not from Texas and you're from Georgia. You know, people have a level of prejudice at all different degrees. But when you start building upon that prejudice and it starts to morph itself into outright hatred and racism, or racism is just one of the things that's created, I think, out of prejudice. And I dare say that, you know, being racist kind of excludes you from humanity to a degree, because it takes away your ability to be able to empathize with other people. It takes away from your ability to be able to see yourself and put yourself in another person's shoes. And so to have that foundation of prejudice, I think sometimes we have to be very, very careful. But I want to go back to, you know, the fear of prejudice and the fear of racism and the fear that comes with otherism. And that fear, I think, is based in what we talked about before, that institutional racism. When an environment allows you to just be outright racist, and the laws that apply, that are supposed to apply to everyone, only work in your favor, and the economic system that applies to everyone only works in your favor, that fear of losing that, I think, has a lot to do with why people are allow themselves to go down that rabbit hole of racism. Because when you can otherize someone to your benefit, I think that's family protection, and I think people just align with that because it benefits them. And so that's a part of that humanity, being able to walk out of that fear and actually just conduct yourself as a human being and ask yourself, is what I'm doing right to that person, in discounting them because of the color of their skin or because of where they are or their economic status? I think we have to be able to talk about that institutional racism and how we operate within it before we can even get to prejudice to a degree.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, that was so well spoken. You know, there has to be an acknowledgement that there's institutional racism. You know, there's some people that still don't want to acknowledge that there is a system that is set up that's unequal. So, you know, it's like we have to bring them to the table and you know, show them where it is set up unequal. And you're right. And until we look at that, the institutional racism, and like you said, I believe that it comes from an anxiety. It comes from a fear of perhaps a, you know, change in power, you know, a change in resources. You know, like you said, self preservation.
Mhm.
And but you know, that's where you meet the line when you say, am I going to do what is best for this person that is across from me, you know, and or am I going to do what I think is going to preserve something for me? You know, we've just got to get to the point to where we can put ourselves in other people's shoes. And like you said, that losing that fear, walking out of that fear is going to be what's crucial.
Sure. And I think it's easy for people to say, oh, well, you know, we're all equal and we have to be equal. We're not. We're not equal because the institution within where we reside is not equal, does not practice equality. So we can't all be equal. I think people miss the boat on that, you know, and how this country was built on, you know, on prejudice, you know, having when the colonists first came, there were Africans there, and there were indentured servants there, and a lot of the Africans were indentured servants. And so there were people that weren't indentured servants that were prejudiced against those indentured servants. And so when you look at the need to survive and the work that was entailed in surviving on this land, and the fact that white people decided that they needed to have servants to do that. And, you know, and so what we'll do is we'll just we'll leave the indentured servants, but then we'll enslave these other people because their skin is darker and they're less than. And so that prejudice turned into discrimination, turned into racism, turned into slavery. So I think we have to unpack those layers and instances and ask ourselves, even in our lives, where am I prejudiced? Where am I discriminating? And how, if it has turned into outright racism? And understanding that even in the construct of all of that, there is no equality until the laws are just. Unjust men write unjust laws. And so until the laws are just, there's never going to be equality in this country.
I agree. You know, how do we get back? I mean, how do you get to that equal footing when so much was, you know, like you talked about, so much was built upon those prejudices, and then that turned into discrimination, which turned into, and there are so many layers that you have to, like you said, unpack and look at. So, like you said, we have to start among the layers. We have to start with ourselves.
Absolutely. I'm going to jump in here real quick because you talked about everybody has a prejudice to something and to someone. I'm as guilty as anyone. I read that story earlier that a man was in the bathroom of the grocery store with guns. I automatically assume it was a white man because it did not say black man. And when I saw the name and the name of the shooter in Colorado, my first assumption was this is going to be Islamic terrorism. And those were prejudices that came out immediately, and they were both wrong. Or well, I shouldn't say that because I don't know. I'm assuming still that the guy in Atlanta is white, or they would have said a black man with.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and that's honest.
Yeah, the media has that prejudice.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, you think about even in some of the imagery that's created by the media, a lot of that imagery is skewed on purpose to create a perception that they want people to accept.
Yes. And to
You know,
act on emotions, to act on people's anxieties, and to act on people's fears. And like you were saying, to basically sell their preconceived reality, you know?
Yeah. I think and even in some of these horrific police killings and when you see Black bodies on film, and you just see like the desecration of a Mike Brown that was laying in the street for hours and hours on end, and no one had the decency to cover his body. And when you just see the countless murder, you see a Philando Castro, how he they showed him being shot on film. I mean, it's almost as if people want that to be the norm. And so I made a conscious decision myself to read the stories, but to stop engaging in the voyeurism of Black bodies. I can't do it anymore. It really plays on my psyche, and it just breaks my heart knowing that I live in a place that allows that kind of disenchantment, and that allows that level of kind of discrimination when it comes to how they show white bodies and how they show a white tragedy and how they show Black tragedy. Even in the instance of a 6-year-old boy walking down the street picking a tulip out of someone's yard, being arrested and having to stand before a magistrate, and his parents explain why he picked a tulip out of someone's yard. What 6-year-old does not do that? But the fact that he was treated in that way should let you know that this is not a just country. It's not. The judicial system in this country only applies to a certain faction when it's applied fairly. And I honestly believe that, because that's been my experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's disheartening. It's disheartening to see these things.
It's disheartening, but at the same time, talking about it is the first step. Recognizing that there are problems, we don't get them solved if we don't bring them to the forefront. If we don't make people uncomfortable about how things aren't going to change.
I think let's go back to those layers, though. When we talk about,
let me say real quick, the reason I've been hopping in and out of the video and the audio is because the doofus dog, and the video is because I was trying to find out what was going on with the Korean missiles. They actually set them off on Sunday, so it's not any breaking news. It's just it's now getting to us, and it was kind of business as usual from North Korea. Hey, we got a couple missiles. We're letting you know we're still here. So nothing major about that. Ladies, continue your conversation.
Yeah, so I was going to say about those layers, when we talk about how prejudice becomes discrimination, becomes racism, becomes outright lawlessness. I think we have to be careful in how we define what those things are and our role at each level. Again, at each level. I think when we can get to the point that we can unpack those levels and unpack where we stand in between the layers of those things, we can really start looking at ourselves from a human perspective, and being honest about how we fit in the grand scheme of things, and how we can try and make it better. We can't fix the system. We can try to fix the system, but the system is going to be the system. How we interact within it will exacerbate that change. And I think that's what we need to, as human beings and as people, start being reactionary. The system is just the host. It's like and we are the good bacteria, within the host that can sometimes turn bad. But when we all act together and fulfill our purpose as human beings, the system as a whole is healthy. It's not healthy right now.
And isn't that, isn't that an incredible commercial right there for EAR? Why you should join
Yes.
EAR?
Yes.
Because that's what we're trying to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So even though I'm not on screen, I am listening. I don't want people to think I'm, ignoring the ladies or anything like that. I'm not.
Uh-oh, he muted on us. But
here.
I'll say this, Marie. And now I grew up in the South. I've in the 60s, and again, I've seen it. If it was to be seen, I have seen it. But I still refused, having traveled outside of the United States for years and years and years and lived outside of the United States on purpose, having have had the experience of being exposed to other people. I would never, ever allow anybody else's actions to make me a hateful person. But that does not mean that I don't have the wherewithal to protect people that look like me, to stand up for people that look like me, Black people, to stand up in the eyes of lawlessness. That does not mean that I'm just like some docile creature. I'm always going to stand up for justice. And a lot of times in this country, it would seem that, I am pro-Black, but a lot of times in this country, I have to stand up for my people because we are the people that are being imposed upon, and that exist in this lawless system, and having to kind of fend for ourselves. So I think we have to somehow figure out how to just coexist. That doesn't always mean that we need to live on top of each other, but I think we have to figure out a way to coexist so that the system is not so imbalanced.
Right, right. And, for people to recognize, especially people that look like me, to recognize that just because someone is pro-Black does not mean they're against white. I don't know where that came from, but it seems like they want to go with that narrative. Like if you're pro-Black, then you have to be against white, and that's not true at all. So
that's very disingenuous. It's very disingenuous. And when you're in the power construct, if someone comes against what you believe is the true reality of how things should be, when someone starts to show you a different picture, you're going to fight because you have all the power. When you perceive that someone else is trying to come in and take advantage and have some of that power, people get agitated and they start to fight, and then they start to kind of err on the side of dishonesty and true and ill truth. They start to err. By any means necessary, they're going to hold on to that power, I think is my point.
Absolutely. I agree. Like you said, by any means necessary, they're going to try to hold on to that power construct. And
I want to hop in on that if you support Black power, you have to be anti-white. That is that's a hurdle, and it's a hurdle that white people have put up primarily, and I understand why people in the Black community, there are people in the Black community that don't trust anyone in the white community. But I have to put it out there that doesn't make you any better by doing the same thing that the people you don't like are doing. You see what I'm saying? We have to rise above. We have to all rise above. Two things can be true at the same time. It can be true and is true that Black people need more power, and it can be true that not going to impact white people to let them have equality.
Yeah. Exactly.
But yet coming to grips with both of them at the same time
Yeah.
is a major hurdle that we have to overcome, in my opinion.
But now to your point about some Black people not trusting white people, depending on the environment that you're in, where you live in the South, especially places like Mississippi and where racism is just like at the core of everything that exists within that state. There are Black people that have lived through some horrific things.
Absolutely.
And so things like that and I know people like that, things like that will make them not trust white people.
Yeah.
There are things that have happened that make Black people look at white people in a suspect manner. And that doesn't mean that all white people are bad, and that doesn't mean that they think that, but they're just erring on the side of caution based on their experience.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Totally get that. Totally understand that. Yeah. Yeah. I went to Vicksburg, Mississippi. Okay. Ooh. And I went to Vicksburg, Mississippi. A friend of mine was managing one of the riverboat casinos there at the time. And he invited me down, gave me the VIP treatment. Everything was on the house, and I was there because I was interested in exploring the Civil War battlefields around and Civil War artifacts around Vicksburg. And he said, you probably shouldn't go out into the community, okay, without knowing where to go in the community, because you can get in the wrong place very easily. And he said, and you need to be aware coming down here to the South that the Black people are going to either call you boss, massa, or sir. And they're going to call it, and they're being derogatory when they call you those things. You don't tell them not to call you that, because that's going to just set things off. So yeah, things are different in all parts of the country,
So I'm going to give you an inverse version of that story.
Yeah.
When I was in the Navy, and we would go to these different places, in like Italy, and we would go to Subic Bay, Philippines, and places like that. And we would go to like St. Thomas and St. Croix, and places like that. And so you had an all hands, and the captain would say, okay, these are the off limits places, and these are the places you don't go. And usually the places that they told you not to go, there were dark skinned or Black people there.
Yeah.
And so everybody on the ship that was Black, we were looking at each other like, what time and how soon can we get there? That was our objective, because we were going to be around our people. But that ideology that because there are darker skinned people there are Black people there, that's going to be an off limits part of town. That's where we went to party.
Yeah.
We knew our people.
Yeah.
So that's kind of an inverse of that story. But still, just that kind of systemic prejudice and racism that exists,
and is passed down as like, okay, this is information you got to have to explore this area.
Right.
Which is just saying, okay, you don't want to go into this area. It's automatically prejudged as you're going to get in trouble if you go in this area. Because
we'd have white people
you're an ignorant white boy from the north. You go in the wrong area, you're going to get in trouble.
Exactly.
And
we'd have white people that were
never happened.
Right. We'd have white people that were like, or some of our shipmates, they were like, hey, we want to go down there. It was like, no, you can't. We can go down there. You can't go down there. Look, don't blow our cover, because then, the captain's going to see us out here, and he's going to know that you're with us. And we just want to blend in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
We don't need no white pinky toes sticking out. Attention to us on our break. You only get off the ship for a limited time. Let us enjoy it.
Exactly. So I'm glad you brought that point up because you just made me remember that experience.
And it comes from last night's live. Somebody asking me, if a group is inclusive, do I consider them racist? If it's an all black group, does that necessarily mean they're racist? And I said,
No,
no.
no.
I said, no, that doesn't mean that at all. And I don't find offense with that, personally,
Yeah.
But
And I think what we have to look at.
I think white privileged people find offense with that. Well, I should be able to see what they're doing. Well, not necessarily.
But that's a part of the white privilege. And two, I think we have to look at the construct again of America and the injustice and the imbalance of systemic racism. We have no power. And for us to just want to be amongst ourselves, we should be able to do that and not cause anybody any harm. But when you're gathering in tens and in groups and your objective is to cause harm to other people, and you're allowed to do that because of the construct and the power, the power that you have to do that and the inequality, that's something real different.
Yeah.
That's something very different. There's nothing wrong with people wanting to be around people that look like them.
Right.
And wanting to interact with culturally interact with people that, and not cause anybody any harm. And I think people don't really look at it like that. They're just looking at it as black and white. Well, they talk about us gathering. Well, we're not killing people like that. We're not going out to lynch people and dragging them behind trucks and stuff like that. But they're looking at it from a color perspective. Well, if they're all black, they got to be prejudiced because they're calling us prejudiced. So, I mean, I think we really have to look at that and understand the power construct that's involved.
And people have to have more conversations like this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
More conversations. That's where it's at. Because, I think that some people, they lack knowledge too.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, some people don't want the knowledge, but there are actually, I believe, people that lack knowledge that if they had more information, like what we've been putting out, and the history and the, understand the different layers, then maybe they could understand why, this community wants to come together and protect and support and buy from each other, and it not be a threat against the white community.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's imperative.
Yeah. But I mean, even the work that we're doing right now, I've seen people change. I've seen who I'm not going to call any names.
Yeah.
Some really valid change that people have gone through by listening and affiliating with you, Doofus, and just kind of thinking about things from a different mindset. And because we've had honest dialogue like this, in which people weren't afraid to share in their experience, and we encourage everybody we want to hear your experience. We want to understand what you don't understand, and we want to make sure that everybody has an equal footing at the table to be able to express themselves, and so that we can all come to some common, at least some level of civility and humanity.
Yeah.
We don't all have to, like I said, live on top of one another, but conduct yourselves like a human being.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's the objective.
Respect and empathy, right?
Yes. Yes.
I mean, those are two powerful words that could go a long way in coexistence,
Mm-hmm.
per se.
A prime
And I think when you operate from that perspective, it's hard for you to be racist, or it's hard for you to hate somebody else when you're able to have empathy. That's
Right.
that's a really conflicted person that, is like, well, I feel sorry for you, but I hate you. You're
Right.
not.
Right.
I think I dated her once.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness.
No, that's called a narcissist.
Yeah.
Right. And,
Yeah,
You know,
I, I was going to say, I remember times, when I was growing up about being told not to go in certain neighborhoods, that it would be dangerous, or, if I was white and going into that neighborhood, that they were going to think that I was looking to buy drugs or something, because white people don't go to that neighborhood, and you don't need to be seen driving through that, neighborhood or whatever, when I had friends, and that lived there. And so, you know, I basically, I went to the neighborhood. I mean, so when you were saying, going exactly where they say, may be trouble, but, it's not, and I'm telling you, I have always been treated with kindness and respect, and, um, people really just need to let go of their preconceived, prejudiced ideas, because every, in so many interactions that I've had in going to a predominantly Black church, and how the congregation embraces me and how I embrace them, and you know there's a sense of wholeness there. See, one thing that, and I mean, this may sound out there, but one thing that I was thinking about is that when somebody is walking in prejudice, or they're walking in racism, I feel like, we were talking about them missing out on humanity, and, before talking about it being, was there a spiritual application to what's going on, and people's anxiety, and, feeling like they're, at the edge. I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought.
No, you were saying this feeling of spirituality and.
Oh, right. So when people are walking in, having a preconceived notion and not having that experience, so they're walking in that prejudice. I feel like you just miss out on it, getting to experience God in a way, because in my fellow man, when we have no background that's in common, we don't look alike, we may not eat the same foods, we may not even worship alike or anything like that, but when you can have a conversation with them, and you connect on a spiritual level, there's that connection in each person.
Yes.
And so you miss getting to experience that connection, and seeing, oh, well, you have a testament that is like this, and I have one that's like this, and oh, well, he did the same thing, this is a miracle that I had. And then you start sharing the news of the kingdom, and the good news of the gospel, and it's interactions that you have with people, and to me, it's just evidence of God, because you find that accord, that you find that one accord that you have, that connects you, and
Right.
it's like everything else that divided you doesn't even matter. It just falls to the wayside when you can find that that connection that's stronger than the differences. And I think that that's what it is. It's a spiritual application. It's a spiritual connection, and we have to not be afraid to be to put ourselves in a situation where we can experience that outside of our comfort zone.
Yeah. Spot on. And I've had that experience in my younger years, when I would go to church and things like that. And then when the service was over, you get to the parking lot, the world sets in. And I'll say this: what you're experiencing in the company of Black people within the church or within any spiritual setting, we're just rooted in spirit. We're a spiritual people. We are the caretakers of the earth. And so that kindliness and that spirituality that you're feeling, that level of kindness, it's innate in us. It's who we are. It's where we come from. And that's been my experience. And I truly believe that, having walked in Africa and places where people of African descent are, and people that have come from different tribes, it's just who we are. It's in our DNA. I've seen people be treated so cruelly, but turn around and be so kind. It was always baffling to me when I was a child. But it's just who we are. I've walked on the continent of Africa and been treated, just like royalty, because people just wanted to be kind, And I'm not saying that it's like some utopia and all Black people are kind, but in general, that's just who we are. We're spiritually rooted to this planet.
And it's not just connections within, it's not just connections within a church or it's connections that we can make with a lot of things we have in music, for example. I went to see the Commodores. Okay. I went to see the Ohio Players open for the Commodores in a place called Market Square Arena in Indianapolis that doesn't exist anymore. And I was with three other white guys, and we had dates, and we were probably the only 6 white people in the concert. Okay.
And nobody cared.
And we didn't think a thing about it,
Right.
All it was we're going to see, we're going to see the Commodores, and we're going to see the Ohio Players, and Roller Coaster of Love, and
Yeah, right. That funk era. I bet you. Look, you couldn't find 6 Black people to go to a Trump rally. It's not gonna do it. We're just not doing it.
Yeah, that's that's a different vibe.
That's right.
It was like when we went in, and we sat down, we had our seats, and we kind of realized, hey, there aren't a lot of other white people here, and we realized that some Black people are like, what are the white people doing here? But before the Ohio Players even started, people are, passing us a joint, saying, the Commodores are come. As long as we didn't cause any trouble, everything was cool.
Right. We're like, they're in here now. Let's go. Let's party.
Yeah. And plus I've played on teams where I was one of only 4 white guys on the team, and we went to predominantly Black tournaments. And a lot of times it was, hey, the white guys can't play. And the teammates are like, there ain't no white guys, they're just a little lighter than us.
Exactly.
Yeah, I often forget that I'm the only white person in wherever we're at,
because you're walking.
That's got to be a great feeling.
I don't think about
it. You're walking in your humanity.
That I don't think about it. I'm not sitting there in my skin going, oh my goodness, what's about to happen? Is someone going to get me? I'm totally comfortable in my heart is open, and so it's like I'll forget in this situation. So there's no telling, what it looks like sometimes, because
do you care? Do you care?
And it doesn't even matter. And I will tell you some of the best when you were talking about some of the best church I've ever had is a little church in Jamaica. We went on a missions trip, and it was to St. Anne's, and we were over there, and we stayed at the mission, and we would go to church, and I'm telling you, that was some kind of church. I want to go back to Jamaica just to experience that.
Were they Rastas or were they Catholic?
And here's another thing: is we were told to stay away from the Rastafarians, stay away from them, and The bad things could happen, or they could sell you evil stuff, like stuff with evil
I've got to
eyes.
make a
You bring
story,
it
but
back
I'm
to
not
the
going to.
States. I mean, all of this stuff, and I'm
Yeah.
just like, so in my mind though, I'm thinking, who are these people and where can I meet them?
Yeah,
The more
exactly.
that people tell me to stay away, the more that I'm going to say, wait a minute, that sounds awfully interesting. I want to know. I want to know. Tell me about your hair. Tell me about, so.
Well, I can, the inverse of that is I used to go to like different places. Like I studied religion. I would go to mosque and I would go, and I actually did. I was living in Hawaii. I did a stint in the Mormon church because I just wanted to know. The biggest question on my mind was why they thought that Black people were the descendants of Cain, who slew Abel, and why Black people couldn't be ordained in the church. That just burned it. Not that I ever wanted to be. I just wanted to know the philosophy. And so I spent like maybe 6 months. And the bishop there was a Hawaiian guy. There are a lot of Brigham Young University. There's a university there in Honolulu, but there are a lot of Hawaiians that they've converted to Mormonism. And so, we would talk after church and stuff. And he said, and I asked him that question once, but I can tell you, man, people were like looking at me like, and every chance people got, they were like, the most they could say to me was like, well, Gladys Knight is a Mormon. And I'm like, what does that have to do with me? but we had this conversation and he said,
Was Gladys Knight a Mormon?
She used to be.
Really?
Yeah.
I knew Michael Jackson was Jehovah's Witness, but I didn't know.
Yeah, she used to be.
I always learned something.
Yeah. And so long story short, I said, Bishop, and we would just talk, and he was this, dark Hawaiian guy. And I said, Bishop, why is it that Black people can't be ordained in the Mormon church? And he said, well, Mormons believe that they're the descendants of Cain. And I already knew, I just asked. They're the descendants of Cain that slew Abel, and so they live in sin. And I said, so how does the story of Jacob and Esau play into that?
Sin?
Huh?
So he said, so because they live in sin. Is that
right? And so one of the questions I asked him, I said, so Bishop, is that what you believe? Or is that, he said, he couldn't answer me. And I said, is that what you believe? And he said, well, Mormons believe. I said, no, Bishop, is that what you believe? And he never would tell me. He never would say that. And then I asked him the question, well, how does the Mormon church see Jacob and Esau? How did, we started going down all of these like biblical kind of stories, and me saying to him that I believe that the Bible is Black history. And he even after I didn't go to the church anymore, he used to come by my house and talk to me, because we would just have these like really great conversations about biblical history. And I don't really think that he was totally aligned with the Mormon church. I think he was a bishop in the church because his family had been, but he had some different philosophies.
I was a minister in the United Methodist Church for almost 2 decades. And,
really?
Yeah, and I retired early, and because of differences in philosophy, let's say.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so I don't carry the title reverend. I don't demand people call me reverend or, but I'm still a minister of God and a minister of the Lord. I've just got an expanded ministry. I'm not just in a church building anymore.
Yeah. Well, I think when we all walk in humanity and we treat other people as human beings, I think we're all ministers of God.
Absolutely. And he doesn't call the qualified, he qualifies the called.
That's right. We're all descendants of Yah.
Okay, I want to end on this because it was something that Marie had said, I think, in one of our meetings, and I mentioned it on a live, and I got some blowback on it. I said that I was talking about the concept of those people, you people, your people,
others,
our people, my people, the people. And I said, sometimes not all of your people look like you.
Mm.
And I got a lot of blowback on that. And I think Maria had said that in one of our meetings. Sometimes your people don't always look like you.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And, touching on, what you had said, messengers, we're sent messengers. And so, are we going to miss some profound message that we are supposed to receive because we let the color of someone's skin get in the way of what they actually have that they could deliver to us? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Knowing that,
Yeah.
having the belief that I walk with the belief that you have something that that I can learn or that I need, and I have something that you could learn or that you need, that type of thing, and so it forms a mutual boundary of respect, and so I always just think, hey, I don't want to miss any of my messages
That's
that are
right.
sent my way. And so you never know what form, what your messenger is going to look like. So you don't want to miss the message because you let the package get you distracted.
It'd be a real interesting question to ask the white community in general. If Jesus is not white and looks like he plays lead guitar for the rock band Nazareth, do you still consider Jesus your Lord and Savior if he has curly hair and darker skin?
Have you ever asked that question?
No, I haven't up until right now.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah,
it popped into my head listening to Marie. So yeah, I just asked.
Yeah,
we should put that on the panel. So Marie, to your point, I always say, I'm glad you said that, because I always say I look at people in terms of spiritual light. And everybody comes here with a purpose. I don't care who you're born through and who you think you're born to, but your purpose is of Yah. And so when I'm of the I'm of the principle that I don't allow anybody to get in my spirit, in my purposeful way, and I don't get in anybody else's purpose in the way of their purpose. I think when we can operate on that spiritual level, we can kind of eliminate some of the otherism and the layers of prejudice and discrimination and hatred when you're looking at another human being in their spiritual presence, instead of looking at them in their physical presence. And I know that's a lot for people to absorb, but trust me, when you don't get in the way of somebody else's purpose and you don't allow them to be in the way of yours, your purpose that you were sent here for, you're free. You're free. So I'm just a firm believer of that, and it's proven itself time and time again in my life.
I feel good. I always feel good after talking to you ladies. I do. Really do. I do. Peace upon each and every one of everybody out there watching. Any final words?
No, I've said mine. I think I'm gonna leave mine.
That's why it was like you finished talking. It was just like, there's nothing to say. That was yeah. Marie?
Yeah, I mean, I was just that well said. I mean, I think that we've just about, said everything, and I would just, encourage people out there to think about what we've said and think about what is your purpose, and also think about because of certain prejudices that you have, could you be getting in the way of someone else fulfilling their purpose? And really examine that, because we're held accountable for that too. I believe that, not only are we, and that's why my actions take me where it does is a higher accountability, you know. But yeah, I would say just to really dig in and say, what is my purpose here? Because there's definitely a purpose for you being here. There's
Absolutely.
a purpose for all of us being here, and making sure that we're not getting in the way because of certain prejudices that we hold, getting in the way of someone else fulfilling their purpose.
Yeah. Yeah.
There you go.
That's powerful.
That's infinity.
Yeah.
That's infinity.
Right.
And if you're out there watching, if you'd like to join us and talk on one of our EAR panels, we'd be more than glad to hear alternative mindsets. If you don't agree with anything we're saying, come on here and tell us why.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Wouldn't it? Yeah.
Yes.
And one final pitch. It's $40. You become a charter member. You get the really nice shirt, and we're going to expand the sizes of the shirt. You get the charter membership card from 2021. Only 50 charter members means you're basically one of the charter members of the organization, and the mission's on the back. What you're basically signing up to charter to is end all racism. It's a massive task, and while the three of us could probably do it by ourselves, we'd like to invite you to join, just so you get some credit when we accomplish it. I'm just being silly, y'all.
We need you.
No,
We need all of you.
we need you. Yes, we need everybody. Come and be a part, because you don't want to miss out on the experience that you will have, the growth that you will have, and that others will have because of a choice that you make. You don't want to miss out on it. Join us. You don't want to miss out on it.
All right.
Well said.
Bless you, ladies. Bless you.
Thank you.
Love you. Bless everybody out there watching. It is an EAR episode. It was ladies' night, and I always enjoy it. I always learn from it. I always feel lifted after these. And I thank each and every one of you for watching. Special thanks to the lovely STARCHILD, the lovely Marie Justice, incredibly strong, powerful women that I'm honored to be associated with. And you can be associated with us too by joining EAR. Until next time, it is the American Doofus Show. Don't be a doofus. I'm your host, Barry Welsh. It is a dark world. It really is a dark world. Be a light. And may the good Lord have mercy on the United States of America, and may he bless each and every one of you.